Guilty on all counts. The words hit like a hammer inside the courtroom. 69-year-old Lillian Harper gripped the edge of the defense table, her knuckles bone white, her chest pounding as if the floor had dropped out beneath her. The judge's voice droned on. Life in prison. No parole, final judgment. The prosecutor shut his folder like he'd been waiting years to do it, and the crowd behind her stirred with whispers that felt sharper than knives. For a moment, she wasn't in that sterile room at all. She was back in the rain 20 years earlier, when 4 shivering kids knocked on her door, asking for nothing more than a place to be safe. The bailiff moved toward her with handcuffs. The steel gleamed, and she thought, this is it, they're going to bury me alive. But then a voice rose from the back, low but firm. Wait. 4 men strode down the aisle. They looked like men who didn't belong in the cheap wooden benches of a county courtroom. One in a gray suit sharp as a blade. Another older with a calm that came only from years in an operating room. A third with the steady presence of someone who built systems and made them work. And the last a man with a press badge swinging against his chest, eyes burning with the truth he carried. They stopped at the defense table. Your Honor, the first said, my name is David Reed, civil rights attorney. With me are Dr. Marcus Cole, surgeon, Thomas Shaw Tech CEO, and Ethan Blake, investigative journalist. We are Mrs. Harper's sons. She raised us when no one else would, and we have evidence she was framed. Gasps rippled through the room. The prosecutor leapt up shouting objections, but the judge's eyes narrowed as he looked from the men back to the woman in front of him, a convicted murderer on paper, but in reality a mother who had turned 4 lost boys into leaders. He gave them 10 minutes. 10 minutes to prove the impossible. And while screens flickered with data and records, Lillian's mind drifted back 2 decades to the night that started it all. Rain pounded like fists on her roof, and just past 2 in the morning came a knock at the door. She peered through the peephole, 4 boys soaked, bleeding, trembling. The oldest maybe 12, trying to stand tall for the younger ones. She opened the door anyway. The smell of wet pavement and fear rushed in. Come on, she whispered, before you freeze. On the stove, she warmed milk-stirred cocoa, set steaming mugs before hands too small and too cold. The youngest asked in a whisper, You're not going to call the cops, right? The second oldest shook his head hard, eyes glassy. They never believe us. So they told her piece by piece. Their parents had died. An uncle named Edward Caro took them in, but his house wasn't a home. Men came and went deals in the night, and the boys worked for scraps. The oldest David planned their escape for months, waiting for one night when no one was watching too close. They asked only for one night under her roof. One night. Lillian looked at their hollow cheeks, their guarded eyes too much like her own when she was a child. She whispered the words that would change everything. Nobody touches you under this roof. The boys exhaled like they'd been holding their breath for years. But safety was always fragile. Within days, the uncle came knocking, tall, gaunt, expensive suit, and that smug smell of cigars. He laid out guardianship papers, legal documents, even waved an envelope fat with cash. $25,000. More than she'd ever seen. Enough to pay her late husband's hospital bills, enough to keep her house. The boys huddled in the hall, waiting for the betrayal they expected. She stared at the money, her hands shaking. Then she tore the envelope in half. Get out of my house, Mr. Caro. These boys aren't for sale. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes turned to ice. Very brave, Mrs. Harper. Very unwise. I always take back what's mine. 5 uneasy years followed. By day, she scrubbed classrooms. By night, she studied for a degree to give the boys a better shot. David won a scholarship. Marcus volunteered at clinics, hands steady as a grown doctor's. Thomas scavenged old computers, teaching himself code. Ethan wrote for the church bulletin, documenting everything, even license plates of cars that didn't belong. They were building futures, brick by brick. Then the call came. Caro wasn't done. He demanded a trade, a kidnapped child for one of hers. Midnight at Pier 47. Bring the boy or watch him die. That night was chaos and rain shadows and screams. Caro's men drew guns. The girl who'd called for help swung a crowbar and cracked bone. Shots fired. David tackled Caro. Marcus held a pistol steady, but refused to kill. And then when a bullet came for the boys, Lillian threw herself in the way. She went down in blood and silence. Sirens arrived, but the story was twisted. Reporters called her dangerous, accused her of stealing children. The boys disappeared into the night and she went to prison with her name in ruins. But those boys didn't forget. They grew into men with scars and fire in their chests. They carried her lessons: don't become the monster, don't sell your soul. 20 years later, they walked into her courtroom and told the world our mother was framed. And that was only the beginning. They dug deep into court files and doctored footage into scars on bodies that didn't match the real Eddie Caro, into forged documents run through machines hidden in county offices. They confronted a ghost named Marcus Webb. The man who'd stolen Eddie's identity played puppet master for 2 decades. He tried to corner them with a cruel choice: kill him to save their mother, or let her die bound to a bomb. But the men remembered her words. They searched for a third door. Not killing, not surrender. Light. Truth. They listened to the hum on a phone call, traced it to the county records building. They found her tied to a chair, bombs wired around her, a young guard trembling with a gun. And in that moment, Lillian didn't plead, didn't panic. She looked him in the eye and asked, "What does your little sister think of you?" His voice cracked. "She thinks I'm a good man." "Then be one," she whispered. And his hands shook, but he lowered the gun. The code to defuse the bomb lay in a date, a child's birthday long buried. Sarah Chen, sister of the boy. Caro had once used as bait, held that code. For years she'd chased vengeance, even walked beside Marcus Webb. But standing there, seeing Lillian still alive, she broke. She punched in the numbers, 07-15-20, the day her brother was born. The bomb light blinked green, and for the first time in 2 decades, Lillian Harper walked free. But freedom wasn't the end. The next morning in court, David stood at the podium, calm but burning. "Your Honor, we present 3 pillars: physical evidence of forged documents, direct witnesses, including Sarah Chen, and digital proof secured beyond tampering." The prosecutor tried to sneer that it was all theater, but the evidence was too heavy, too real. Even a detective, bruised and bloodied, testified this woman was framed, this city manipulated. The judge looked down after a long silence. This court vacates the conviction of Lillian Harper. The gavel struck, and the ice around her heart shattered. She walked out, not as inmate, but as mama again, surrounded by sons who refused to sell their souls. In the months that followed, they built something new. A community center called Door 3, teaching kids that there's always another way. Thomas released his data system to protect truth. Ethan expanded his journalist network to give voices to the voiceless. Marcus started a medical fund in memory of the boy they couldn't save. David formed a legal unit to fight wrongful convictions. And in the middle of it all, Lillian kept a small yellow lamp on her windowsill, glowing through the night, the same signal she once used for 4 trembling boys, that the door was open and home was waiting. Sometimes she sat on her porch with Sarah Chen beside her, now legally adopted as part of her family. Sometimes she listened to her sons argue over code or laugh over burned cookies. Sometimes she just stared at that lamp and thought about the choice that had defined her life. She could have taken the money. She could have turned those boys away. She could have let bitterness turn her into stone. Instead, she chose to love. And that love didn't just save 4 kids, it pulled down an empire of lies, it changed laws, it shook a city. But here's the part that lingers. Not everyone agreed she should have been freed. Some said she'd broken the law years ago, taken kids that weren't legally hers. Others said the ends justified everything. And in that tension, the argument still lives. What matters more, the letter of the law or the spirit of justice? So I want to ask you, if it were you, if 4 children showed up on your porch in the rain begging for safety, would you risk everything to keep them? Would you take the money and walk away? Or would you, like Mama Lillian, bet your whole life on the chance that love is stronger than fear? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just her story. It's a question for all of us. If justice means dragging the truth into the light, then maybe we each have to decide which door we'd walk through. 2 dark doors, or that third one glowing with a small yellow lamp. And if this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories where ordinary people stand against impossible odds and remind us all that love and justice still matter.